Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Sports Illustrated beat writer covering the Las Vegas Raiders and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider podcast. Super excited to be with you guys today. Got a ton of thoughts from the first OTA, just what stood out, what to me was some really good um, stuff. We're going to go through it all. I want to remind you that I told you my next set of deep dive articles will be 3 parts, and part 1 will publish tomorrow. I think you're going to like it. I think it's going to make you, if you're a Raider fan, I think it's going to make you really, really proud um, and of your organization. It's going to be super good. So make sure you check it out again. It will publish tomorrow at noon Eastern and 9 o'clock Pacific, and with an accompanying podcast that I think you're going to enjoy. So we'll see you tomorrow for that. All right, let's dig right in. Thoughts and everything from OTAs. Several things stood out to me. Absolutely several things. And I'd like to get into those in a lot of detail today. The first thing that stood out to me was the general, it was like being on a college campus. The excitement was there. Guys were jacked up through the roof. It was just, to me, you've always seen the Raiders excited. You've seen them confident. But it was just different. It was a different type of excitement. I put some video up yesterday of special teams coach Tom McMahon, which all of us in the press room, to a man or a woman, said that may have been the best coordinator press conference ever. Now, I know special teams coaches don't necessarily get all of those accolades, and I understand why. But I encourage you. I put Tom McMahon up, Luke Getsy, and Patrick Graham. I encourage you to go watch all 3 of those videos, or listen if you're doing the audio cast, but go check them out. Absolutely go check them out. Just trust me on this. You can thank me later. Go check it out. Absolutely phenomenal. They were all super good. McMahon stole the show. Just the detail, the way he really taught us in the media. At one point, I just admitted to him, listen, I'm ignorant on something. I'm looking for clarification. It was phenomenal. It was, so that started in the morning before practice, and it really just set the stage. It was fascinating to me. I observed several things, and I'll start with the coordinators. I'll start with AP because he's the boss. Now, I'll start with Telesco. He's the boss. It was very interesting to me that Tom Telesco was out there and just observing and looking at, watching the smallest of detail. He in so many ways, personality wise, everything else, just reminds me of Dave Ziegler, and just the way that he is so attention to detail. He's so focused. That's not always the case. A lot of times you'll see them out there, and they're walking around and whatever, but they're not zeroed in. And again, I thought it was really interesting to watch how he watches things, to watch how he uh, aggregates things. You can learn a lot about a person if you just watch. Just keep your mouth shut and watch. And it was fascinating to watch him in his presence, the respect that he has for AP, the respect that AP has for him. They've just got a really unique relationship. And when I use the word unique, everybody thinks, oh, no, it's not that way at all. In fact, I'll get into a little bit more of the detail. A lot of general managers, and I've already reported this, have told me, and not just general managers, executives, and coaches, matter of factly. But one of the things when there's a new coach and a GM that did not pick him or did not select him, excuse me, when that goes on, there is a lot of the general manager hedging himself. I mean, there are only 32 of these jobs. And so even though the general manager may be all in and whatever and want that guy to succeed, they're still kind of protecting themselves. They still try to keep a little bit of a buffer. That's not the case with these two. And I told you after the draft that I had one executive when I asked him about what is it about this draft that stood out to you. He goes, these are all AP players. There isn't a Telesco guy, and he wasn't saying that Telesco didn't like the players, but he was saying that these are AP guys. This is Telesco making the statement, I'm all in with my coach. And I think that's really cool. Um, I know that Telesco's being genuine and being very forthright has really appealed to AP because AP is that way. And I think both men are no, I think I can just say I know both men are very pleasantly surprised at how well the other listens to the other. They understand and they get it. Both men are very driven. Both men, I mean, you don't get to one of 32 jobs in the world and not have some semblance of confidence. But what's unique to me is both men are egoless. Now, let me explain. You say, what do you mean? AP is just largely, yeah, you can be confident and not be an egomaniac. And you don't see that with AP. For example, when he was coaching, he told the players, don't make it about me. You go out and make it about you. You put on film and whatever. If you make it about you, it'll take care of me. He didn't want that. Is he out there? Yes. Is he um, demonstrative? Yes. Is he gregarious? Oh, got to tell you something funny about that in a minute. Is he gregarious? Yes. Is he the leader? Yes, but that doesn't make him an egomaniac. And I think Telesco, his role as general manager is not to be um, the dominant force. A good general manager, I've heard it, I've reported this to you before. I've been told this multiple times. A good general manager understands his owner has an ego, needs it to be fed, and that the coach needs to be propped up because people are going to follow his example on how much respect. He plays it well. I admire the way Tom Telesco, whether you're talking to him privately or on the record, I admire the way he handles himself as a man, the way he handles himself in his position. Um, I know general managers who have privately um, been something different than publicly. I think people can sniff that out. I remember one time covering a team where the general manager uh, was not genuine at all, and they publicly tried to come off as that, and fans just hated the guy. And you don't have that with Telesco. And what has surprised some people in the building is the way he listens to not just AP, he listens to players, and it doesn't listen to players in a complaining mode, just, hey, what about this? Tell me about this. What's going on with this? Same thing he does with the coaches. And I think he has surprised a lot of people how he's done it with the non-football people. It's very fascinating. And I think that stood out. Then you come to Antonio. And yesterday, the way he, not just yesterday, but the way he moves around the field, the way he empowers his coaches to coach. I remember this. If it seems like I'm being careful what I say, it is because for a couple of reasons. First of all, have tremendous respect for the Raiders, and there is nothing that I will ever discuss that would be hurtful to the Raiders. Period. Now, it doesn't mean I won't be critical. Doesn't mean I won't say I don't agree. You guys all know that's a fact. But it is. I also don't want to give away information that could be damaging. And so by that, I'm just very careful with how I'll give you scenarios, not necessarily specifics. But I will say there was a time when watching AP and a coach had talked about and taught how he wanted something, and a player did it, and it was a really good rep for the player. And to hear, and most coaches just wouldn't say, or they'd say, "Hey, good job," or "good rep." And to hear AP say, this is why we hired this man. Good job. You listen. He made you better. Just the way AP respects his staff. That's really the best way of saying it without getting into a lot of details or who the player was, because that could be privileged information. But the way that I thought, and I'm going to be very honest, because most first year coaches struggle with this. I thought he would try to be a dominating presence and try to show everybody, oh wow, I'm the head coach now. Everyone knows he's the head coach. This is one thing that I genuinely, and I for the record, I admit I consider AP a friend. But this is one of the areas where he really has won my respect. AP is so comfortable in his own shoes. He knows he's the boss, and everybody there knows it. So he doesn't have to walk around carrying a heavy stick. His coaches coach from, and he's empowered them. That is one thing that stood out to me a lot. And I know Zeke was with me at practice, and I think he would agree with this. Under the previous regime, everything was scripted. It was a business. Hey, we just stick to the process, stick to the process, to where it just became methodical. And I have a lot of respect. I'm from Michigan. I have a lot of respect for people on the assembly line. My job is take this bolt, go to the next car. Same thing. 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. But that can also, I have a friend who worked on one of the auto lines and talked about how it was really good for him. He used to say to me, I do one thing and it just becomes so much of a habit. It allows me to, even though I'm working, he was going to school full time also at night. And he said, I'm able to be thinking about my classes. And it was great for me. It was a great job. And those people do a tremendous job, our factory workers do. But when it is that, there has to be you have to add some type of other stimulation, or it just becomes, and that's it. Same thing hundreds of times a day. And he's allowing his coaches. I'm not going to get into what position it was, but there was one thing yesterday where I watched the coach change a rep a little bit. And that would not be something that you would have seen previously, where everything is scripted and everything is, we stay right on script. No, it was something he saw. And so nope, we're going to do this, did it, bam, moved on. It was real quick, but it was empowering them, listening to them talk to their players. It wasn't, okay, just do this and then we'll go in and watch the film. It wasn't just, football is a business. Let's not fool ourselves. It's a $7 billion business for the Raiders. Okay. We know that. That's factual. And we respect that. So I'm not saying you cannot respect the business side of the game, because we all know that would be stupid. But yesterday and at OTAs, again, was a game. If something happened, it wasn't right, just let it go. We'll go watch it on film. It was correcting, teaching at that point. I think that was one of the biggest reasons the Raiders got better last year under the old regime, was just, hey, keep going, keep going, keep going. We'll go in and watch the film, talk about it later. Here it was, yep, we're going to keep going. And the pace was even faster. And I was talking to Vinny Bonsignor, my friend from the Las Vegas Review-Journal. And him and I were talking about the pace being different. And we agreed with one another that we both noticed that. So I think they actually maybe even got more reps, but there was more teaching. And the last staff, I love to teach, but they did it in a classroom setting. And what I'm hearing is they're doing it on the field and in the classroom. And I'm going to be talking to some players about that. and I'm going to get into more detail hopefully on that. If what I'm seeing, and usually what I'm seeing is accurate, I'll get into more detail on this on a previous on a later podcast. But that was interesting to me, the way that AP walked, and when he walked to a drill, it wasn't, oh, the head coach is here. It was, he acted in a role of, I'm here to support your position coach. It was just phenomenal to me. I thought it demonstrated what I already knew about Antonio Pierce, which is his character, which is his integrity. Um, and I just thought it was great, and it was just visibly different. All right, so let's talk about um, Patrick Graham. He talked about being giddy. He even said, as a defensive coordinator, I shouldn't use that word, but about Tyree and what he's seeing and about this defense. I asked him specifically, you got a whole off season and you're a tinkerer, and you are a guy that likes to, get in there and change things up. And he openly talked about how much he's enjoying that. I mean, I think he's got 9 starters back. Um, he's got a team that's got some really intriguing young players, and he's got some really intriguing older players back. One thing, this goes back to the AP point, was a lot of times when there's a need for a coach on a staff, the head coach and general manager, usually the head coach will pick them out, or the general manager, and they kind of go through it. They brought a Patrick Graham in. Hey, we're glad to have you. You should be a head coach. You've earned this. What do you think about the direction that we need to go for a cornerback coach? And so I said to him, hey, a lot of coaches and general managers don't let the coordinator in, but you hired a cornerbacks coach. What did you like about Ricky Manning? And he said, I like the fact that he played at this position. He's got credibility with these guys because he played. And I like the way he teaches. And so it's interesting just to watch how that all unfolds, and watched how, Patrick Graham was extremely excited. And they know. Now, I'll give you a great story. I remember one year I was covering an NFL team, and they brought in a high profile offensive coordinator. And that high profile offensive coordinator, never forget this one day. I'm walking to my car. I was one of the last people to leave after practice. I'd gone in, I'd done all my media work, and I was one of the last guys to leave. And this offensive coordinator stopped in the media room, and I was there alone. He knew I was there alone, and we started visiting. And I kind of walked into my car when he walked in, so he just kind of followed me. It was kind of unique. And he goes, well, I'll just follow you. I want to talk to you. So, okay. So we get out to my car, and he starts telling me everything he didn't like about the defensive coordinator and the head coach. And I'm like, why? Why? All right. And what I like about Patrick Graham is he's all in on AP. He's all in on Getsy, and he's all in on the team. And there's a sense of excitement. This may surprise you, but in the NFL, not all, but there are a lot of CYB, cover your butt. A lot of guys thinking about the next job, because most NFL jobs do not last very long. Most, um, not most, but a lot of NFL people are always CYB, CYB, CYB. I had a situation one time where, again, offensive coordinator was telling me what he didn't like about the defensive coordinator and the head coach. Defensive coordinator telling me what he didn't like about the head coach and the offensive coordinator. And the head coach telling me why he didn't like the coordinators, but who the general manager wanted. I mean, it was nuts. Literally, it was nuts. And so where I would really tell you what stood out to me, Patrick Graham, was this is a guy that should be a head coach, isn't a head coach, but he's the best defensive coordinator. And he's got all these players and weapons. He's got young guys he's trying to bring along. And he just sees it as a stew. I don't know what your grandmama was like, but my grandmother, she didn't throw anything away, even though she was not a lady who was poor. She had come through the Depression when there was a lot of poverty, and she had been poor during the Depression. And so she would never let her stuff. And so you'd get to the end of the week, maybe Saturday morning or whatever. She'd take everything in the fridge and throw it in, and it was always good. But somehow she'd make a stew out of it. Oh man! And you could just see AP looking at all of these pieces, thinking, "Ooh, this and this." Now, I will tell you, the excitement over Tyree Wilson is palatable, and it's palatable from his standpoint. It's palatable from um, Pierce's standpoint. It's palatable from his teammates' standpoint, and palatable from the Patrick Graham standpoint. That to me, a lot of excitement, just with him. And I don't know when you're watching this. We're taping it in a little bit. It's like 6 a.m, so it's kind of early. But if you're on the East Coast, it's not necessarily early. It's 9. But one of the things that really stands out and really was visible was just the excitement around the players. Now, later today, that's why I said I don't know when you're listening to this, but later today, somewhere in the afternoon, I'm going to put up Michael Mayer, Thayer Mumford, and Mayer, Munford, and Tyree Wilson's interviews. Make sure you watch them. Just trust me, you'll thank me later. All right. So then we move on to Luke Getsy. Now, I know there are a lot of people that were not excited about Luke Getsy. Okay. I understand that. I am not going to sit here and tell anyone that wasn't excited, you're dumb, you're stupid, whatever. That's fine. When you look at just what he did in Chicago, I think there's a lot of reasons that you could take a second. But I've detailed to you everything that he did outside, and I detailed some things at Chicago that should have given Raider Nation at least a shot of I don't know that maybe enthusiasm was the word, but I think optimism for sure. Optimism. And so I like Getty. I have enough people who know him that like him, excuse me. And I know how excited AP was about him. And I asked him yesterday, because I've been telling you for weeks about the offense, it's not done yet. They didn't know they were going to pick Bowers, and so they're adding new stuff there to the playbook. And so I asked him about that, like I told you I was going to. You can go watch that video. But again, I love the way Luke answers questions. I love the fact that he thinks. If you watch a press conference, there are some guys that almost try to talk over the question because they're not listening to you. They know what their talking points are and what they want to say. If you watch AP, if you watch the coaches and the staff, Patrick Graham, Luke Getsy, Tom McMahon, they listen and they answer the question you ask. Now, there are times that you can tell, okay, they don't want to answer that. So they dance respectfully around it, but they don't BS you. I'm telling you, and that was something. This is my 5th year. The first 3.5 years, every time somebody talked to you, you had to almost parch everything that they said. And a lot of it was, ugh, and you just kind of threw it away. Gruden was fantastic about not saying anything, or even you would ask a question, hey, John, what is it about that long snapper that you really appreciate? Well, let me tell you guys. I got to tell you, when AJ Cole gets that ball in his hands, man, when he gets that thing, he's like dealt with an electric guitar, man. And he would and the way that AJ Cole, and he goes on and he'll give you a 20-minute about what he loves about where AJ Cole puts the ball and say nothing about the long snapper. If he didn't want to talk about it. If he did, he was great. Now, if you take this as me slamming Gruden, you're wrong. I really like John. Okay. So I'm just saying to you, it was humorous to me the way John would do it. All right. Now, Rich Bisaccia, he was a little bit, no, he was a lot different. So I guess it wasn't fair to say 3.5 years. But Rich Bisaccia, you'd ask him a question. If he didn't want to answer, hey, coach, can you tell me what you thought about the long snapper? Did a good job. No, I'm great friends with Rich, and Rich is going to crack up when he sees that and probably send me a text. Thanks a lot. Wouldn't give me a face. But Rich was a guy that was a lot like AP as well in this stat. Okay, but Josh McDaniels, oh, oh, hey Josh, can you tell me about the long snapper? And he would give you a 10-minute answer about football. And I mean, it was always a good answer, but it just wasn't any good answer to your question. Again, difference in styles. These guys come in, they listen to the question, they do their best to answer it. I don't remember who I was talking to. So it could have been Paul Gutierrez. It could have been Deshaun Reed. Could have been Vinny Bonsignore. But one of the media members, and again, I don't remember, or I would say who, and I were talking about, you can just tell these guys are allowed to give information. They understand it. They're able to talk about it. And remember, these guys love football, just like you do. And so I really think you're going to notice the press conferences just being incredibly different. I really encourage you this year, make sure you're watching the press conferences with the coordinators. Make sure you're getting into them. I think you're going to get a bunch of valuable information. So Luke was terrific talking about, really still tinkering and figuring out stuff. We talked a lot about Thayer Mumford, not a lot, but Thayer had told a few of us in the media last year he was more comfortable at left tackle, which he is. It wasn't him saying, I'm not playing right tackle yet. Remember, I'm the one that kept telling people, don't forget Thayer Mumford. This is some guy a lot of people just overlook. You may remember when I did my predicting starters, I had Thayer at right tackle. A lot of people thought, just didn't talk about Thayer, but they did very much like him. Now, and with Thayer, so I said to Luke, he has talked about being more comfortable at left. Obviously, he's not going to unseat Colton. So does that maybe put him in more of a swing role, or what do you think of him at the right? And he said, flat out, he's only, I expect him to say he's more comfortable. He's played that more. But I think he's going to, by the end of it, be able to say it. I'm more comfortable at right. I thought that was, again, Luke being honest about how he thought Thayer was going to approach it. Now, I want to address, excuse me, I'm still getting over strep throat, but I want to address something that I said probably a week or 10 days ago. That after rookie camp, they worked JPJ, Jackson Powers Johnson, at left guard. And but I said I still expected him to go back and play right. I don't feel that way anymore. And when I change something, I'll never pretend like I never said anything. I'm not a revisionist. I'm going to tell you why I feel that way and why I changed my opinion. Now, I knew that he was going to get some looks at left in the rookie camp. So that did not surprise me. I was aware of that going into rookie camp, that was going to happen. But two things happened at rookie camp. First of all, it was JPJ has an incredible football mind, and he understood it. Now, he's also a rookie. So you have Thayer Mumford, who's trying to get comfortable at right, Colton, who's a rock star. I've been telling you all along, I maintain it and I stand by it. Dylan Parham is the most underrated Raider and one of the most underrated players in the National Football League. This guy is pure stud. S-T-U-D. Excuse me, Dylan Parham. Stud. S-T-U-D. I've been telling you all along, Dylan Parham is the most underrated Raider, and he's one of the most underrated players in the National Football League. So in their discussions and their thought process is, okay, We know what Colton is, and we know that JPJ gets it. He's smart, but he's still a rookie. He's making rookie mistakes. If we put him between Andre James and Colton, does that help him a little bit for those guys to help him? But Dylan's such a stud, he can flip and be next to Thayer, who is in, just learning, but playing well, but he's still young. And then you've got two real young studs on the right, got a solid center, super solid stud center. You got a stud left tackle, and you got a rookie in between them. So it was more of putting JPJ in a position. Obviously, Colton's got more experience than Thayer, so just that little bit to help. And so they were impressed with JPJ, or they wouldn't have picked him. But that's their thinking process, and I respect that. I will tell you, I don't think that was, well, I know that wasn't the plan. That wasn't a definitive plan going into rookie camp. But after they saw some things, they're like, okay, yeah, we think we can do this. Let's do this. And that's how it all worked. So that's how, so I completely changed that opinion. I think the depth chart's going to be Colton and JPJ on the left, Andre Sims at center, Dylan at right, Thayer at right tackle. And I think that's a heck of an offensive line. Young, I mean, if you look at it, I don't know that you can call Colton young, but he certainly is not old. I still would say that Andre James is a young player. I think I want to define how I say young. Max Crosby to me is still a young player because he hasn't reached his prime. Okay. I think Colton has some things he can get better at, but he's in his prime. So I don't think he's an old player, but he's certainly not, a young player. He's a guy in his prime. Andre James, he's a young player. I know he's had a couple of contracts. Still think though he's a young player, but he's solid, really, really good. Dylan Parham, to me, he's 2 years in, and he's not a young player. He's a force, and the guy is always available. He's a tremendous worker. He's an ethereal thinker. There's so much good about him. Thayer, and he's coming. And JPJ, I think, is going to be a star. So, again, I think that's a very solid offensive line. Am I calling it a top five? No. But I think it doesn't have to be a top five. Then you throw Mayer and Bowers on the ends. Come on, somebody. Come on, somebody. That's good. That's good stuff there. So again, I stand behind what I said. I admit it. I did not think that Dylan would flip. Now that I understand the reasoning why, and I share it with you, I totally do. But I'm being accountable to you as my listeners. If I change, I'm just like when I make a bad prediction or I say something, I'll tell you what it is. I have no problem with that. You deserve that accountability. Okay, so let's go now and talk about the QB situation, because that's what everybody wants to know about. It's what everyone wants to talk about. It would be foolish to pretend that's the most important position in the National Football League. So let's talk about on the field players. Quarterback. Aiden O'Connell is visibly bigger. I mean, visibly. And he was never in bad shape. But do you remember the pictures? If you haven't seen the pictures, go Google the picture of Tom Brady at the combine, where he didn't look like his body was chiseled. Okay. Aiden O'Connell last year was not in bad shape. He was not fat, none of that. But he didn't look chiseled. Okay. And when you watched him at OTAs, his body, you could tell he worked a ton on his body. He was in that building almost every single day, hitting the weight rooms, working out, working on mobility and agility. Those are very important. I'll explain to those in a minute. And working on accuracy. I put some videos up on Twitter. I really encourage you, if you're not following me on Twitter or IG, either one, I put the videos on both. On Twitter, I am at Hondo Carpenter. On IG, it's at Hondo SR. Go watch those videos. And just his accuracy, his mobility, you can see him moving very well. What I thought was interesting, you could see him moving to the right and to the left. You could see him moving laterally up and just sliding. Again, his mobility is significantly better. His accuracy, which I don't think's ever been an issue with him, but his accuracy was just on the money. In fact, one of the videos I put up, I got a ton of email on about his accuracy. He looked great. Now, as I get into this for a minute, you also need to remember everybody's in, they may have a helmet, but they're not padded up. So you have to, what happens is sometimes in the off season, people get so jacked up over what they hear. And usually it's the offense because remember, football is a testosterone fueled, violent, physical football game. And it's it's just meant to be played that way. You're in a phone booth with a Tyrannosaurus Rex or a Tyrannosaurus Max. That's pretty funny. Anyways, so you cannot take that out of it. So the only things I'm going to talk to you about, though, are things that are tangible without pads. Okay, so I'll give you a couple of examples. Just the way he was able to move was significantly better. His physical build significantly better. Now, that's great in OTAs, and it's going to be great in minicamp. But if that doesn't parlay to the field, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And so what I'm challenging you to understand is I give you this information, you can take it, process it. Oh, that's good. He needed to do that. That's good that he did. But let's wait and see. Sometimes you need to act like you're from Missouri. Show me. And that's okay. So, but that was visible with him. His accuracy was tremendous. His movement was extremely good, and his physical build was impressive. Let's go to Gardner, because Gardner is the number 2. It's why I'm talking about him at 2. Everyone's trying to look into everything. Let me just quickly say this, okay? Gardner is very mobile. I was very impressed with his ability to throw on the run. I don't think he's Brett Favre. I'll give you a quick one. I mentioned to you all the other day in a podcast that Dylan Labe, size-wise, reminds a lot of people, and his juking ability, of Barry Sanders. Now, I said right on the podcast, ain't nobody says he's Barry Sanders, because he ain't. But it's a poor man, just that the size, the juking ability. Man, people ran with that. Was hilarious. I can't tell you the amount of emails I got from people. Hondo, how do you put up with this? I'm like, I'm not mad about it. People are saying, oh, Hondo calls Dylan Labe Barry Sanders. No, he didn't. He's got some Barry Sanders traits, but he's not Barry Sanders. Come on now. You're not that dumb, and I'm not that dumb. So follow me here for a minute. Gardner Minshew has a lot of that gunslinger Brett Favre in him. He's not Brett Favre. He's more mobile than Brett. I think but he's not Brett Favre, who I think was a phenomenal quarterback. But he isn't Brett Favre. And so what I would say, though, is I was very impressed with his ability to not just throw on the run, but to throw accurately on the run. I always heard people say, oh, that guy can throw on the run. Well, I don't care if he can throw on the run. Is he accurate? Now, one of the reasons that people, and I got an email yesterday, one of you heard me do a national radio show, and I talked about that, and they said, can you explain to me, let me find it. All right, it was from Crystal. Crystal said, Hondo, just heard you on the radio. I have a quick question. Can you explain what you mean when you say the ability to throw on the run? What makes it different than throwing from the pocket? Great question, Crystal. Thank you. So let me get into this. when in the college football, for the most part, you got about a 24 to 36-inch window that the quarterback has to get the ball into a window. And then you expect with the wide receivers with the big arms, range of motion to be able to go get the ball. When you throw on the run, your body's going in one direction. So you're already moving. And if you've ever taken physics, you understand exactly what I'm talking about. You already got a force in motion. So if you try to throw against your body, a lot of guys, unless their arm is a cannon, you don't have that strength or that ability to place the ball. And so what happens is, when you're on the run, it's very hard to get it in the window. Well, then when you get to the pros, you're looking a lot of times at a 12-inch window. So it goes from 36 to 24 to 12 inches. So when you're on the run and your body's moving, you got a force in motion. Remember physics, and you're like, because you got to get that ball in that window, and you've got physics working against you. So only guys with it is an amazing thing. Listen, I know this is going to get me hate mail. It does every time. But let's just stop for a minute and give credit where credit is due. I don't know that I've ever seen a better quarterback. I have. I've seen one as good, but not better. The two best quarterbacks I have ever watched throwing on the run, I mean, throwing on the run, is Patrick Mahomes and Steve Young. I think Joe Burrow is good. I think Josh Allen's good, but I don't think any of them can compare to Steve Young and Patrick Mahomes. And I'm going to give Patrick that credit. I know it'll get me some hate mail, but it's the reality. So there are very few that can be super accurate. Now, Gardner's career has not demonstrated that he is as accurate as I saw him in OTAs. So because I don't have a place, I have a judgment of where I can judge Aiden because of where he was last year. I have a distance point. I have a place of reflection. Okay, I can see here's A and B, so I'm able to track. I don't have that with Gardner. I wasn't in his practices last year. I saw him play live once, saw every game that he played on video, but that isn't not being a practice and all that kind of stuff. I don't have enough to say X, Y, and Z. But I do have this to say about Gardner. With all the film I watched on him and watched him in person and his track record, I can tell you that the Gardner Minshew that I saw, which was accuracy on the move, he's certainly more willing to be mobile than Aiden. That's not. I would say it's more willing because I think Aiden would do whatever he was asked. More he at this point it would appear like he's more comfortable with mobility on a regular basis than maybe Aiden is. I think that's fair. But his accuracy was impressive. Now, what's that accuracy going to be when he has a Max Crosby in his face? What's that accuracy going to be when he's got a Robert Spillane coming at him? What's that accuracy going to be like when Christian Wilkins is breathing down his neck? And one of the criticisms of Gardner in the past is under pressure, there are some times when he'll take some risks. Brett Favre did that too. And again, I'm not saying he's Brett, but sometimes that gunslinger, it works great, but it can also produce turnovers. Like one NFL executive said to me recently, there's a reason that Gardner hasn't been, a franchise hasn't invested in him at this point and said, you're our number one. What happened was I had asked an executive, who do you think starts the Raiders? He said, Aiden O'Connell. I said, why not Gardner? And he goes, well, they've been very vocal about their support of Aiden. He goes, but second of all, he goes, he has a track record. He goes, he's not a bad player, he's not a bad guy, but his track record is of mistakes. And Aiden doesn't have that track record. So I thought that was a very interesting insight. So what I would say to you is I was very impressed with Gardner and his movement. Very impressed. And his accuracy in the midst of movement is what I meant. Very good. I thought it was really cool. He made a really good play. and Aiden was right there to encourage him. And then Aiden made a play, and Gardner was right there. I'm not going to get into any formations, any of that stuff. Obviously, that's information that's privy to the Raiders. But I will tell you that uh, if I think both men had a good OTA, and it's going to be really hard to judge before pads. I will also tell you, I don't think there's any movement with Aiden 1, Gardner 2. I don't think there's any movement there. I think that's still what it is. I think it's what it's going to be in the other OTAs in the mini camp. And if that changes, I don't think the change will come before training camp. But I think both quarterbacks had a really, really good day. Now, I want to talk about I yeah, one thing that stood out to me, um, and I think both men had good days. I think both men did a lot really well. But one thing that did stand out to me with Aiden was the crispness of his ball. There was zero hesitation. Last year, at times, you would see Aiden, and let's be honest, coming down the stretch those last 5 games, I always hear people say, well, you can't give him credit for what he did those last 5 games. Look at all the touchdowns the defense scored. Okay. That you could that is an opinion, and while I don't agree with it, I get it. But like one Raider coach said to me, if we're up 2 scores because the defense scored, or we're up, a score, it's going to change how we call the game too. We're not going to ask him to do as much. He still finished the last 5 games, 9 touchdowns, 1 interception. Period. Period. And so, but to me, there were times a little bit you could tell he was like, ugh, I don't want to turn the ball over. It would appear he was thinking a lot. I think that's totally fair. Um, Yesterday it was boom, boom, and crisp, right on the money passes. And I think that just shows a maturation in him. Again, I don't think any quarterback did anything to hurt themselves over OTAs. All right, I want to get to I've already addressed it a little bit, but I want to hit it even more. The pace. I have been to thousands of practices. I mean, I go to them all the time. It's what I've done for decades. I don't know that I have been in a practice, certainly not a Raider practice, with that kind of pace. And that's why I said it was unique that they were able to keep the pace up, and the coaches still coached more. I'm gonna admit to you, I was not expecting that, and I'm still processing that in my mind. The pace was so go, 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 but unlike the previous regime, which was go, go, go as well. Oh, if you screwed up, keep going. We'll talk about it in the film room. They would talk about it, but it was quick and kept going. It was just the pace was different, and the enthusiasm was through the roof. You would have thought this was, week 1, and they were playing Sunday against the Chiefs on Monday Night Football. They were jacked up to be there. Jacked up to be there. They were fired up about it. And would you say, well, shouldn't they all be? Well, okay. I'm just telling you, as a guy that's been to a lot of them, that's not always the case. But they were jacked up. What I thought was interesting, and Patrick Graham mentioned this about, he mentioned seeing Malcolm Coots. Someone asked him, how's Malcolm different? He goes, he's coaching. He's so comfortable now in where he is. He's got his mojo now. And so he's helping young players. That was a surprise to me. That was a surprise to me. I was stunned at just everybody talking to everybody. I saw a pass drill where the receiver was coaching up a DB. Or, receiver just beats the DB. The DB runs over to him. Wasn't turn around and go back. It was, hey, runs to him, and then they run back together. And you could see the DB was like, hey, what did I miss? Whatever. It was just really interesting. And the pace was just so fast, so teaching. And I got to tell you, it wasn't a short practice. but it wasn't one where you could tell the players were like, oh my God, when does practice end? No, it was there you could just tell there was guys, let's keep going. Let's keep going. They know that they know. I will quickly tell you this. They know when, all right, this feels like this is going to be a long year. You can just always tell in the players. You can tell when it's raw enthusiasm. They were excited last year. I think they really thought the team had a chance to be good last year, and they were excited about it. They were super excited about it the 2 years before, but it was not excitement like yesterday. Yesterday was, man, let's keep going. Let's go. Let's go. Um, it was interesting. Now I want to talk about Michael Mayer. So when Michael Mayer played, and I don't want to hit a lot in this, I'll put those videos up later today, but when Michael Mayer played at Notre Dame, he was a dominant tight end. He was really Notre Dame's offense. Notre Dame was Brian and Packy Kelly. Brian, of course, was his coach at Notre Dame. Packy, his wife, are friends of my wife and I. So this is not in any way a slam. I think he's a great coach. But his last year at Notre Dame, I mean, he was the offense. He was. And last year at times it just and when he played at Notre Dame, he played like Max Crosby plays right now. And last year, that adjustment to the NFL is a hard year. And then he gets injured. And I asked him yesterday, I said, at Notre Dame, you were so gregarious. And last year, you certainly didn't have an attitude issue. You didn't have an effort issue, but you weren't Michael Mayer of Notre Dame. And then I said to him, but watching you during OTAs, and Michael Mayer of Notre Dame is back. Boy, he got the biggest grin. Yeah. I I think the Bowers pick was great for Mayer. And I'm gonna tell you something that is behind the scenes a lot of you don't know. And I asked him about this. And when the video goes up today, it could be up now, depending when you watch this. When I said to Michael yesterday, I said, you were a new regime, a new coach than the ones that picked you. You hear Brock Bowers' name called, but what did it mean to you? The respect that this organization showed you, that they called you and said, listen, us picking Bowers has nothing to do with you. You are as much in our plans as always. We believe in you. And you can go watch yourself, but he lit up. Now, I'm a big Michael Mayer guy. I like the kid a lot. I like the player a lot. I think he's a stud, and he's just salt of the earth kid. To the best of my knowledge, I've never met his family, so I say that because salt of the earth kid, just salt of the earth kid, and just to see the old Michael Mayer back should tell you everything you need to know. Now, I want to talk about one last thing. I'm going to just say this. I have been telling you all along, I thought Trey Taylor was the steal of the draft. I stand by that. And I'm not going to get into any specifics, which would not be fair to the Raiders. But Trey Taylor looks the part. Just the way he handles himself, the way he performs, the way he communicates. I've told you all, I was big on Trey Taylor before the draft. You guys all know how I am. I'm big on the person. Trey Taylor's a guy that could have went to a lot better football schools, but chose Air Force because he said, I know that football's not forever, and it was a better education, and wanted to serve his country. I mean, that's selfless. And I had heard a lot before the draft about Trey. If the draft had fallen differently, I think the Raiders would have grabbed him higher than seventh. I know they had a higher than seventh grade, and they really liked him. Just the way the draft fell, and certain guys just kept falling and falling and falling and falling. They were stunned he was there in the seventh. I don't know that I would use the word stunned. They were stunned that Bowers was at 13. I will say they were pleasantly surprised he was there at 7. They did not think they were in any way going to get him. Because of how their board fell, they just kept grabbing guys, and they didn't think after the 4th or 5th round they were going to have a shot to get him. And that was Christmas. And I would say, if I was talking to Trey Taylor, don't you allow being picked in the 7th round to discourage you, because you make real money in your second contract. That kid's a stud. He's a leader. He is a competitor. And this OTA, he made some plays. And he made some plays, and he was really good. So there you go. That is an update of the Raiders OTAs. And remember, follow me on IG at Hondo SR, on X, formerly known as Twitter. When you go to @Hondo Carpenter, si.com/NFL/Raiders. Please check it all out. Look forward to seeing all of you. Again, hope you enjoyed that recap. It was a really good OTA. But again, no pads, so don't make more of it than what it was. But I would say it was a super solid OTA. Thanks.